Hey now, ho now. This is what trees are made of. Hello, welcome to Middle Earth Magic. I am Xandra Sunland Burns, also known on occasion as Xandalf, and I am here today with none other than Randolph, the tree whisperer, my good friend Rebecca Hall. Hello.
Hello. Lovely to
Very
see
Lovely to see you too. We are talking about trees today. This is the first video interview we're doing for this series. So thank you for tuning in. And Rebecca, thank you for offering your expertise on this subject matter. So we're reading Lord of the Rings. We're reading Lord of the Rings in a magical manner across 6 months. Oh, look at those sticky notes. I'm so excited.
you.
Um, we are reading Lord of the Rings across 6 months, and the main goal that we have is to read for fun. And reading for fun is magic. So, how do we work with that magic? The the approach is quite simple that I'm offering, which is that for each section of reading, choose a favorite quotation that stands out to you. And it can be totally random or super profound, but let that be your guiding light on this ever unfolding journey. So my my quotation and what really stood out to me from this set of chapters, beginning with the Old Forest, really made me think of Rebecca because I don't know anyone who knows trees as well as you do. So I thought you could explain to us from your perspective, WTF is going on with the trees.
Of course.
So we're going to get into it. I'll start with my quotation, which is something that Mary is saying here in chapter 6. He says, "But the forest is queer. Everything in it is very much more alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things are in the Shire." Now, as we read on, we come to learn that there is something specifically mystical going on here with Old Man Willow.
Mhm.
But what occurred to me is that the way that Tolkien talks about fantasy in in his other works is fantasy gives us a way of seeing our reality differently.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if there's something, and so the example he gives is like if you're reading about Ents, which we've not met yet, but they're coming.
Right.
If you read about Ents and then we go out into a forest in our world, the idea that an Ent could be there changes our experience of how we approach our
Mhm.
normal world. But I
Mhm.
think something is going on in the reverse here as well, where Tolkien is kind of picking up on the extraordinary magic of trees, and he might not even understand what he's channeling or picking up on here. So, Rebecca, I want to turn it to you. What are you seeing happening in this forest?
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing this to me. This has become a great little adventure for me to kind of dive into this. I have read The Lord of the Rings before several times, but I think the last time was likely before I really got into the whole tree thing. Um, and I love, uh, I love the quote that you chose, and I also love that you mentioned, Tolkien as author is kind of bringing some intent into the story in terms of how we're going to be able to relate to ourselves and to our world through this kind of like mythic tale of the Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien himself was folklorist is not the right word, but he was a professor of tales or what anthropology or something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, so Old English and linguistics, which had a lot
Yes.
of overlap with
Yes.
mythology.
Yeah. And so, you know, when I read this chapter in particular and I read about the Old Forest, I'm seeing it very much through a mythic lens. And and I'll get into it. I think what I see happening, in the broadest sense for our sort of little hobbit heroes in this chapter is they're going on a journey of descent, or this old forest is actually,
Mm.
this is pretty early on in their tale, right? We've already had some forest interactions in The Hobbit with Bilbo, but for
Yeah.
these guys, this is kind of what I see as their first initiation into the mysteries and into the descent, a la Inanna, a la, going into the underworld, a la, it's kind of like they only know so much about their individual relationship with the world beyond what they know. Hobbits are, described in the books and by Gandalf lovingly and warmly and positively as, being very like attached to their comforts and wanting to, as kind of a group, they tend to want to stay home and be comfortable and, eat their food and do their regular routines and not have too much change. But then we also know that at least three of our adventurers, Frodo and Pippin, and no, just two, maybe. Definitely Frodo and Pippin. I'm sorry, I was including Sam in my mind, but then I was like, no, that's not right. Frodo and Pippin are both descended from the Took line. Pippin himself is a Took through and through, Pippin Took, as we know,
Mm.
which are
Hmm.
the sort of adventuresome hobbits. And so they have a little bit of like a wild hair in their lineage, if you will, and in their ancestry. But let's see, I can go a lot of directions with this. And so I want to keep
Yeah,
it
and by
contained.
the way, we're not being super strict about the like what
Where does
Hobbit
it
lineage
go?
came from what like okay,
Right.
I know there are people who are like
Yeah.
really up on their Hobbit knowledge, and that's something that can be kind of intimidating about reading The Lord of the Rings, but I'm honest, I'm here for the plants.
We're here for the plants. We're here for the plants.
I know
And
plants, I know mountains.
yeah,
Let's just
boom,
have fun. Yeah.
boom. One reason why I mention it though is I think that there is something interesting, mostly just saying that Frodo and Pippin are related, and that we know because it's explicitly mentioned in this book and in The Hobbit that the Tooks are, you know, they're a little bit fun. They're a little spicy for hobbits, right? Um, and and I think that's something that's going on because of actually what Mary is talking about. I love the quote that you pulled, that the forest is queer and that there's a strange awareness and there's something going on. There's a couple things about Mary specifically and his role in this that I really enjoy, not because of his lineage or anything necessarily, but because, first of all, we read in this chapter that Mary is the only one who's actually been into the Old Forest before, because it's
Mm.
near, the Brandywine, I believe, or Brandy Buck home, or whatever they call it. Mary has been into the forest before multiple times, actually, including at night a couple of times, which is when the forest is said to be like extra mysterious. And what you'll notice if, while reading this chapter, what you may have noticed is that while all of the hobbits are affected by the mood of the forest, it gives them a sense of unease and a sense of like strangeness and kind of fear going on. They're fearful. Oh no, this is happening. Pippin especially. Mary is not as affected. Mary maintains a more positive attitude, and I think for two reasons. One is that he's been in the forest before, so this is not as brand new of an idea to him as it is to the hobbits who have never ventured into the forest. And because also you'll notice Mary is doing a lot of the narrating in this chapter of what's going on. He's the one going ahead, seeking out the path. Oh, look, there's sunlight, like we'll be okay. And he's also telling the story right in the beginning of this chapter about what happened with, they say that the trees at one point from the forest had attacked the hedge, and then that the hobbits at that time had burned down hundreds of trees in the forest and started a bonfire. So this is a story that Mary is telling right in the beginning. The hobbits came and cut down hundreds of trees and made a great bonfire in the forest, burned all the ground in a long strip east of the hedge. After that, the trees gave up the attack, but they became very unfriendly. There's still a wide bare space not far inside where the bonfire was made. I think they actually might pass where that bonfire happened at some point during their little adventure here. But anyway, the reason why I mention this and the reason why I think it's important and ties in and kind of maybe the ancestral or cultural element ties in with what I'm considering as a descent into the mystery through the forest here is that Brandy is telling this tale and he already knows about it, but the other hobbits seem to not have even awareness that their forebears have had this contentious and even violent relationship towards the forest. And indeed, that the forest, and this is a big thing, that Tolkien has woven into his stories, particularly around forest stuff, but also just in general, that the trees are individual beings. This is an initiation into a different understanding of the world that's, what I would call, if talking about people, like the more than human world. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like transcending.
Transcending the boundaries of species or race. And so it's a little different, right? Because these are hobbits and there's also elves and there's also men and all of these are like sentient types of beings and in the world of Lord of the Rings. So it's not just the more than human world. That wouldn't be accurate to say, although hobbits are descended from men. It is then, which I also think is relevant here. I think without getting too deep into the overwhelming detail that is woven into these books, Tolkien's universe is very, very developed in terms of where everything comes from and how it connects. And so that's why I mention it. But anyway, I think something that's going on here, I think even maybe the main thing that's going on here is that the hobbits have just left the Shire where they've been comfortable. They've started on this adventure. They're going to have to go do this really hard thing of, taking the ring to Mordor, destroying the ring, whatever. Or at this point, that's not, they're trying to take it to Rivendell. But they've started this journey. But the first thing they have to learn on this journey is that their worldview is very small. And the way that they're going to encounter that is through fear and through things that they don't understand and they don't yet know about, which we would call in psychological terms the shadow. So
Wow.
they're encountering this through the forest, and because the forest is more than what they understand, it's sentient. The forest itself is sentient. The beings in the forest remember. They're talking about this is the old forest, right? Thousands of years, likely. These trees, I don't know. Where I work at the University of Arizona, there's a tree ring lab, which is, it's a world center of dendrochronology, which is timing and dating things using trees. And they have like a slice, a section, cross section of like a 2,000-year-old sequoia. It's twice as tall as me, and I'm 6 feet tall, and it's like when you see the vastness of a tree like that, which most of us haven't encountered a tree of that large size in our lives at this point. Some still exist, but it's rare because most of them have been cut down like in our world and stuff. If you can just imagine a forest full of humongous trees like that have eons of knowledge, they would know the history of what the hobbits have done to them. Not these hobbits as individual beings, but the hobbits' culture, the hobbits' ancestors, and the hobbits' ignorance to that is part of their ignorance of their impact on the world.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I think there's like this is part. The initiation is happening through what I see as almost like having to grapple with the impacts and the consequences of an ancestral wrong that was done to the forest. Because Mary talks about, it's, I'll shut up. It's,
No,
I'm
no,
gonna let
no.
you jump in here for a minute because it's like really juicy and I get into it, but yeah.
I just want to like let that land because I think that's so important to understand about the context of the series, but also about what's happening, like how we can relate to this as people and those who dwell among the trees. I'm so glad that I asked you, Rebecca, because I was thinking about it like I'm a person and that is a tree. And that was a very like Frodo Pippin way
Mm,
of relating to this, when actually it's more about the relationship of what line do you come from and how does that interact with another lineage in a sense, in the form
yeah.
of this forest. Oh, there was something else, but I lost it. But yeah,
If
just
if
jump
if
in.
if you pick it up again, just interrupt me
Okay,
because
okay.
just be like, oh wait, I remember.
Yeah. But yeah, did you want to share your quotation from this
Yeah,
chapter that you sent me?
yeah, I will. So like I had told you, I chose three quotations, but the main one, let's see, here it is, that I think was important is after an hour or two, they had lost all clear sense of direction, though they knew well enough that they had long ceased to go northward at all. They were being headed off and were simply following a course chosen for them, eastwards and southwards, into the heart of the forest, and not out of it. So there's almost a magnetic pull into that which we don't yet understand about ourselves or who we are in relationship to the world and where we come from.
Mm.
There's almost a magnetic pull of the mystery and of the darkness and of the descent. And it's framed here that the forest is kind of heading them off and pushing them deeper into that sort of karmic reckoning, if you will, as an
Yeah.
initiation. But I really think this chapter is the first brush that they have with that encounter with the world being so much bigger than them and them needing to kind of shed there's you have to be kind of almost killed in a sense. That's how it happens in the mythic stories, right? Like Inanna, as like the prime example, she goes into the underworld and is killed, and there's the twin sister, and then but she emerges up, and this is like a common theme. But it's like they have to kind of die a little bit to their small sense of who they are as hobbits and their level of comfort, because they're going to have to get so much bigger in order to actually take this journey that they're trying to take on. Um,
And that was actually related to the thing that I remembered now,
yes.
which is something that stood out to me about Frodo and Gandalf's conversation about him taking on this responsibility chapters ago,
Yeah.
when Frodo is kind of like, oh man, why did it have to be me? Why did it have to be during my life? Oh,
Yeah.
shucks.
Yeah.
No, well, like, why did it happen to be me? And what is becoming kind of unwound is this idea that they had any control over this situation, and that there's like, you're not an isolated figure, you are like piecing into this world and this grander plan. So I love what you're saying about like, this is bigger.
This is bigger.
Yeah.
This
It's
is bigger
bigger than
than
you know. And a lot of
like
the
the
like
hobbits.
navigation about the particulars of the journey are really funny to me, being familiar with the whole, like I know how big this book is. I
Yeah.
know how big and deep this journey
They're
is.
going.
And
Yeah.
they're like, well, we just need to like get out of the Shire a little bit, and I guess we'll go to Rivendell because elves are cool. It's like,
Right.
okay, you can make some of these decisions, but some of these decisions, the forest is going to pick it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to
Absolutely.
shake you up right away. So I would love to hear your take on unless you had anything else
Old Man
immediately
Willow. No,
about the
just
Willow. No, I want to know about the Willow.
the
Why
Willow.
Willow?
Why
What's
Willow?
going on with Willow in particular?
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna say I actually think like Tolkien definitely does know his stuff about maybe about trees, but definitely about linguistics
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
as you know, I have, been studying with the Ogham, which is an ancient Irish alphabet, but it's, also like a sacred, like now used as like a divination tool. And basically, there's a relationship with each letter having a meaning. This goes really deep into, this is linguistics of kind of Ireland in a sense. This has its roots in that. And so I looked into and also like went back into my own notes, my own experience of Willow, because Old Man Willow in this tale, he's you know he's getting the hobbits. The hobbits are going through, and then he's like lulling them to sleep. And then as they're falling asleep, he's like kind of casting a spell over them. He's like ensnaring them and bringing them to death. And Willow is such an interesting, they're called feed. So the Irish word for this, or the Irish name of this letter, is Sal, Sal. And Sal, or Willow, has they all have like certain phrases, like poetic phrases that are associated with them. Two of the poetic phrases for Willow are hue of the lifeless one, and let's see, I have a note on this as well. I want to make sure I get it right. Hue of the lifeless, pallor of a lifeless one, and delight of the dead. Willow is a fascinating tree, and that makes it sound like it's a negative, terrible tree, and the context in this story makes it sound like willows are bad or something. That's not the case. But willows willow bark contains salicylic acid. There are a few trees that have something like salicylic acid, and salicylic acid is the basis of aspirin. It's a pain reliever. It's an like anesthetic, if you will. So in ancient cultures that had willows and that had a relationship with the land and everything like that, it would be used to for as like a pain reducer. Sal, the name, also, I think and in my own little journeys with this tree and with this Ogham letter, I feel relates also to salt. Hue of the lifeless, pallor of a lifeless one, sal meaning salt in, having that root in Latin, and in Irish, apparently. We have this kind of, there's kind of this salted earth connotation that I think is really interesting and really important with Old Man Willow. Now, what he does is he puts them to sleep. He makes them feel really comfortable, really at ease. They've been stressed in the forest. They've walked through this little weird clearing where they were like, oh, this is a weird little cleared circle. That's what I think is, the
burning
place
happened?
where the burning happened. Yeah, I think that's what happened. And fire and burning, like salt, kill, the things that allow, plants to grow and stuff in the earth. And I think, so I think that Old Man Willow is kind of doing a little bit of like retribution against these hobbits. And, and when Tom Bombadil finally enters the story and he's like, oh my gosh, he, first of all, important to say, Tom Bombadil is who he is because he knows and he recognizes the trees by name. He knows each of them. They're like his neighbors. They're like a community. He says later in the next chapter, he's not the lord of the forest. He doesn't own the forest. They don't belong to him. But, he just knows them. He knows them all. He knows what's happened too. And he's like, he says to Old Man Willow, why are you waking? Like, you should be sleeping. Like, dig deep, drink water, and he's like, no way, I'm not gonna let this. But yet, I think that's the relationship that he has. Okay, cool, clocking that. That kind of changes the story here, I think. But I do think Old Man Willow is kind of waking up at the presence of the hobbits after they've walked through this clearing and stuff like that, where nothing will grow except some little nettles and stuff like that, firethorn, weeds and stuff. And and he's kind of stepping in like justice for the forest, even though our individual hobbits haven't really done anything to the forest, but like hobbits in general. So
Mm,
there's
makes
this
sense.
injustice being, there's and this retribution that's kind of happening through Old Man Willow. And Tom Bombadil
Yeah.
stops them because it's important that the hobbits do their quest and everything like that. So it wouldn't make sense for them to die at this point in the story.
Yeah, that would
But
be bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I did also pull just a fast little reading on
Oh,
just
you
like
read my mind.
a question about what was going on in this story because I knew
Yeah.
I wanted to talk obviously about Willow because Old Man Willow is, is this little character that we get. There's one quotation in like the last paragraph right before this chapter that I thought was
Mm.
interesting, and it's where Frodo's falling asleep before they go into the forest and he's dreaming of the sea. He says, when at last he had got to bed, Frodo could not sleep for some time. His legs ached. He was glad he was riding in the morning. Eventually, he fell into a vague dream in which he seemed to be looking out of a high window over a dark sea of tangled trees. Down below, among the roots, there was the sound of creatures crawling and snuffling. He felt sure they would smell him out sooner or later. Then he heard a noise in the distance. At first, he thought it was a great wind coming over the leaves of the forest. Then he knew that it was not leaves, but the sound of the sea far off, a sound he had never heard in waking life, though it had often troubled his dreams. Suddenly, he found he was out in the open. There were no trees after all. He was out on a dark heath, and there was a strange salt smell in the air. Looking up, he saw before him a tall white tower standing alone on a high ridge. A great desire came over him to climb the tower and see the sea. He started to struggle up the ridge towards the tower, but suddenly a light came in the sky and there was a noise of thunder. I think that passage is foreshadowing what's about to happen in the Old Forest, where he almost falls into death, actually, because the tree tries to drown him. And Willow does have its associations with both the sea and the moon and the tides and water. It always grows near water. And then, like I say, I feel there's a connection with salt as well. And, so I kind of like
Wow.
that passage. And it also foreshadows what's coming, like in the greater journey as well, which we don't need to get into at all.
Oh, fantastic. Yes.
But
Ooh.
the two that I pulled for what's going on in this chapter kind of question were Nietal, which can be associated with reed. This one is made of reed. It can also be associated with other things, though. So Nietal, which is meaning kind of like wound and healing,
Mm.
sort of like a Chiron type energy to that. And then Luz, which is fire. So I really feel that the burning of the trees created this wound in the forest, literally physically, and in the hobbit's lineage, a wound of like a moral wound, a moral wounding
Mm.
is going on in
Oh
this.
my gosh.
So I was so excited.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Yeah. So it's like there's not just a linear story going on. It's
Mhm.
like the trees in this forest have their own agenda. They have their own history that they are reconciling with. And
Right.
the
And
hobbits have,
understandably.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So well, that's cool.
Yeah. So I feel the trees are the coolest. There's a presence. We won't even get into the Ents and all these other things. Like it's, but
Maybe
yeah, this
another
is
day.
maybe
So
another day.
my final question for you is if one of the readers among us encounters a willow or is like encountered a willow in this chapter and is like, oh, I feel like there's a message for me. What kinds of things how can they listen
Mhm.
to the spirit of the willow?
Absolutely. I love this question so much. I personally feel that my approach and what I feel works best with trees is simply to sit quietly with them, and to ask a question. You can even ask it silently inside yourself and to kind of hold that question and allow space, like not, you don't go on and keep going with it. You have to be quiet with trees because trees like the ends. But trees have a long time, and the message, we have to get quiet to receive the messages from Willow. So I really think just sitting with a tree and asking a question. I also think it does a lot to go up and touch the tree, introduce yourself. You don't even have to say words. Like words are not as important,
Mm.
but touch the tree, consider it an introduction where you're introducing yourself to the tree. I like to give trees a little, I like to imagine my aura and give them a little of my aura energy. Usually I feel a little
Mm.
of their aura energy. That's getting a little woo-woo, but that's kind of how I like to do it. And if you have the opportunity, depending on the context and where you are, and if you were able to prepare or not, or what's available around you, just an offering of water is great. Yeah. I personally find willows and most trees to be very friendly and not to be, you know,
Good to hear.
giving retribution. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and advice. Is there anything else you'd like people to know or check out? I know that you can be quite mysterious in your ways of being reached.
Serious. Well, yeah. So I moved this spring, and so I've been off my my stuff or whatever a little bit for a while. And I'm currently looking into whether or not I'm going to do a master's program. So it's kind of like I've things that I'm thinking about that I'm not wanting to start another project in the middle of it right this moment. You can reach me by email. Well, first of all, I do have a website. It's RebeccaAHall.com. There's not really much on there right now. You can't buy anything, but I think I still have a link where you can sign up for my emails. Those emails are pretty sporadic at the moment, but that's probably the best place to go if you want to hear something from me when something is available. And yeah, so I think that's probably the best move.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
And
I
you
will
can
put a
also reach
link.
out to me directly through email, which is r@RebeccaAHall.com.
Cool. I will put those links in the description. All of our future lessons and readings from Middle Earth Magic will be on my Substack, xandrathewitch.substack.com. And some of them will be here on YouTube, but not all of them. Some of them will just be text. So make sure that you're subscribed to the Substack for the full journey. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for starting off this series. And thank you to the trees.
Thank you, Tree.